In this video, we're going to show how you can clean up your audio and remove mouth sounds during the editing process. Now, I'll preface this video just by saying that it's always going to be better to not have mouth sounds in the first place, so doing things like staying hydrated and drinking water. Some people like to chew gum, some people eat apples. There's all sorts of tips and stuff that you can find online, but taking those sorts of steps first and trying to prevent this will always be a big help. But sometimes these sounds will find their ways into your recording anyways, and it's nice to know that you can salvage some of your takes and remove them. So some situations where this kind of editing technique would be helpful would be maybe if you only have one take, or more likely if you have a few takes, but you have this one really great take that's perfect, except for the fact that it has some mouth noise on it. Another situation might be where maybe you were doing a live session and the client was listening in, and now that you're editing it and getting ready to send it to them, you're finding that there's some mouth noises, and you can't really just go record another take because they're expecting the takes that they were listening in for when you were recording with them. So all those different types of situations are different times when something like this might be pretty useful. So I'll start by showing you an example. So I have a couple samples here of voiceover clips from recent auditions and recent jobs. And I'll just show you how you can apply two different techniques to these clips to remove the mouth sounds. So let me first play for you our first clip, and you'll hear that there's actually two mouth sounds in this clip. We can buy and rent and lent. We can buy and rent and lent. Okay, so you should have heard two click sounds after the words rent and another one after the word lend. So the first step is always going to be just to identify where those clicks are actually happening. So your first step will be just to listen and see if you can pick out where in the voiceover it's actually happening. So let's do one at a time and start with the one that happens after the word rent, because we could hear that it happens right after the word rent. So let's try to zoom in on that and just narrow down on the area. So I'll select this segment first, and rent, and rent. Okay, so it's in there still. So let's zoom in a little bit. And let's narrow down even more. Rent, rent. Okay, so it's still in there. Let's narrow down even more. Rent, rent. And it's still in there. So let's zoom in, narrow down even more. And there we go. That's pretty much it. So now visually, you can see it as a spike in the waveform right here. So we're going to keep zooming in. And once you zoom in a lot, you'll be able to see very clearly where it is. So you can see the waveform is very smooth. And then once it hits this point, it spikes. So all we're going to do is try to be very precise and select just the part of the waveform that spikes and a bit of its tail also, and remove it. And that's it. And now let's go back and listen again. We can buy and rent and lent. We can buy and rent and lent. So you could hear now actually, because this clip has two different clicks in it, the difference between after the word rent and after the word lend. And rent and lent. There we go. And then as an additional optional thing that you can do, if it feels a little rough to you, you can do a quick fade out before the area that you removed and a quick fade in after the area that you removed. So let's play that. We can buy and rent. We can buy and rent. So some people might have a problem with it and say, well, you're actually removing a section of the waveform and all of the audio is going to drop out right here at this point where you removed. And it's going to be a big difference between this section and the other sections of the waveform where there's actually audio. And that's true. The audio is completely dropping out here. But the thing is that it's such a small fraction of a second that when you're just listening to it, you're not even going to hear it. And if you close your eyes and just listen again, see if you can actually pick out an area of the voiceover where it completely dies off and is, completely silent. So now I'm going to show you a different technique, and this is something that will give you the same result, but it's a different way to do it, and this way is a little bit more useful when the mouth sound is happening on an actual syllable or on a vowel sound and is more embedded in the voiceover rather than if it's something that's after a word, like the example that we just did. So here we have another clip. So I will just play this for you first and see if you can hear where the mouth sound is. Common cold and influenza. Common cold and influenza. Okay, so if you listen closely, you can hear that on the word influenza, there is another click sound, and it's pretty much right after the N sound, so it's like influenza. So listen again and see if you can pick that out. Common cold and influenza. Okay, so now in this example, the sound is really pretty much embedded in that word. So in cases like this, you can still try the deletion method that we just did, and it might work fine, but it's usually better to use this other method that I'm going to show you. So to start, it's the same thing. We got to just zero in on where that sound actually is. So let's do that first. An influenza. An influenza. So let's take a smaller section. Influenza. Influenza. An even smaller section. Influenza. Influenza. We still have it. Influenza. 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 So we still have the click in there. And now you can hear that it's in this little phrase that we have selected. So let's zoom in and see if we can visually see it. And at first, you might not know really what to look for, but the more you do this, you'll pretty much be able to spot these right away. So now we can see that the waveform is pretty smooth going along here. It's pretty smooth, smooth. And then right here, we have another spike. So let's just select that and just sort of, to verify, just play that very, very short piece of audio. And you can hear that that is a click sound. So when it looks like this, it's pretty much embedded in the actual audio that we want. So we could try, like I said, the deletion method, but this new method that I'm going to show you is even better. So again, when we zoom in, you can see very clearly where it is. And what we're going to do is go up here to the pencil tool, and we're just going to manually draw in what the waveform should look like. So I'm going to just follow this. It goes up, and I'm just going to draw it. And it's not perfect, but it's way smoother than it was before. And let's just play that back. An influenza. An influenza. An influenza. So there you go. We just manually drew the waveform to get rid of that sound. So I will just undo so you can hear the before. An influenza. An influenza. An influenza. And I'll redo, and you can hear the after. An influenza. An influenza. An influenza. So there you go. So it's much smoother. So the more you do this, the more, like I said, you'll get to know what you need to be looking for, and you'll be able to spot these different sounds in the waveform right away. And it's the kind of thing that you can really do in 10 seconds or so. So it's not just something that you need to only do on really important jobs or something. It's something that you can really do on auditions or, very short projects also if you want to, because once you get good at it, it really won't take you that long. So there you go. Those are two different methods that you can play around with and try them out on your own auditions and your own jobs and see if you can hopefully salvage some good takes and take some of this extra noise out of them. So if you like this video and you found it useful, there's all sorts of information in the video description so you can stay up to date with any future videos or future articles. There's Twitter and a mailing list, and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that stuff. So that's all in the video description. So hopefully this is something that's helpful and will be a good tool that you can sort of add to your editing process and hopefully salvage some good takes. And like I said, the more you do it, you'll get better at it and you'll know what to look for. And it's the kind of thing that you can ideally really knock out in 10 seconds or so. So best of luck and thank you for watching.